Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here. This is a City Council Committee on Health and Human Services. My name is Cindy Bass. I am the chair of the committee, and I want to thank you all for being here this evening as we hear testimony on resolution number 200403. I want to acknowledge the presence of a quorum. We have appointed members to the committee for the purposes of this hearing and having a quorum. We have with us Councilwoman Maria Quinones-Sanchez, Councilman Mark Squilla, and Councilman David O. Will the clerk now read the title of the resolution?
Resolution number 200403, a resolution authorizing the Committee on Public Health and Human Services to continue to hold hearings and assess the City of Philadelphia's efforts as coordinated by the Managing Director's Office and Human Services Departments to prevent and treat abuse, addiction, and disease related to the use of opioids, and to assess the city's response to the 2020 Restorative Investment Plan for Kensington Residents.
Thank you. Before we begin, I want to open it up for a statement from any of my colleagues if they would like to make an opening statement. This is obviously a critical issue happening here in the city of Philadelphia, and we need action on it, and we need some resolution on this particular matter. This is something that's been going on for far too long. We certainly acknowledge that it's taken a toll on our communities, on our city at large, and we look forward to hearing what it is that you have to say tonight in terms of working towards a response. Councilwoman Sanchez?
Thank you, Chairwoman Bass, and thank you for your service and your willingness to host. This is our 6th or 7th hearing, a continuation of a public conversation around the challenges of Kensington. I assure you that the residents of Kensington, our civic leaders, will eloquently speak to the challenges that we have, so I don't want to take up any more of anyone's time. Just want to let folks know that this is an official hearing, and just for logistics purpose, we are going to ask folks to listen and be respectful to the testimony. We have a stenographer, and the hearing is being recorded. If you have signed in for testimony, please let the folks at the front know that you are here, so that as we're starting to call up the panels, we will call up a panel of 6 folks, 3 that will be here, 3 that will move to testify, and then we will move the folks accordingly. Very different than what we traditionally do when we're in council. And again, I want to thank all of the residents. I want to thank all the civic leaders who began organizing at McPherson at 4 o'clock. All of the folks should be aware that the administration, unlike other hearings, we will have public testimony for 2 panels of 6 people, and then we will hear from the administration, and then we will get everyone else's testimony. So out of respect for the residents, we wanted to make sure that your voices were heard and that you shaped this public discussion. We all know that this is a citywide issue. A citywide issue. It's an issue in the state, it's an issue in the country, but nowhere else what has happened in Kensington has been allowed to happen. And we are here to demand that the residents of Kensington get their lives and their quality of life restored. Yeah. And so I want to thank all of you. And I'm sure Councilman Squilla will speak for himself. Councilman Squilla and I have done everything possible, and we continue to work with the administration, and we continue to advocate with you and for you, but we are just as frustrated and just as outraged as you are. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Squilla, Councilman of the 1st District, as we share Kensington. I want to thank our council colleague, Councilmember Bass, for allowing us to have this hearing, having it in the community, in the neighborhood, in the area that is most affected. It is so important for everyone to see and hear from the people who live it every day. And we know what it's like because we hear from those residents every day of what they're going through. And so it's only fair that the city and the administration hear from you of what it is to live in a community that has been overrun and basically taken over by people who come to visit. And we as city council need to come up with different policies of how we're going to address these issues. Like Councilmember Sanchez said, I'm not going to speak real long because it's more important to hear you. But it's important to hear you because the people in the community are the ones that are suffering through this. The people who live in the neighborhoods, to have to put up with the defecation, urination, needles, lawlessness, and everything else that goes along with this. We have now in the city of Philadelphia not helped both the people who are on the street, and we have not helped the people who live in the communities. And it's time that we change the way we do things. And now it's up to you to voice your concerns, offer your opinions, and then see what we as a city are going to do to make those changes. So thank you for being here, and looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you.
Councilman, thank you. Councilman, would you like to make opening comment? No, you're good, okay. All right, so why don't we begin, Mr. Clerk, if you could call forward our first panel of witnesses.
Yes, could we please have Eduardo Escoval, Shannon Farrell, Casey O'Donnell,
One, two.
Talk to them instead of putting our backs to everybody.
Hey everybody, sorry, got to get my notes out. You'll have to excuse me if I'm a little bit hoarse. I may have been yelling a little bit loud out there. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
This isn't in my prepared remarks. Just thank you everybody for being out here. This is one of the most heartening things I've seen in a long time. Thank you. In May of 2018, drug dealers attempted to murder me, my wife, and my mother by firebombing our home. I naively believed at that time that this would be the peak of the violence in our neighborhood. Surely, I thought, those charged with the business of governing would see that something had gone terribly wrong and would marshal whatever resources needed in the face of such violence targeting community members. One a block captain, one a civic leader. More than 3 years later, I have watched my community be subjected to ever more unspeakable and ever more regular violence. I have realized that my black and brown neighbors and those struggling with addiction are not getting relief because the government of this city doesn't consider them worthy of such help. I have been threatened more times than I could ever count since that day for the sin of asking people not to deal narcotics in front of the young children and families on our block and those nearby. I have been threatened nearly as many times by those who feel it is their right to use drugs in front of these same young children and families, and was physically attacked in broad daylight on March 18th of this year by a man I have the privilege of seeing walk around the neighborhood to this day, having received no help, no intervention to stop a repeat of the same situation again. I still think twice about asking people to at least leave our children in the playgrounds, and still remember the day that a man threatened to beat me with a brick for asking him not to inject fentanyl in his arm at the McPherson Square playground. This is fucking Kensington, is what the man yelled at me as he attacked me on March 18th, and I've heard the same call repeatedly and with increasing regularity. Some of those who struggle with addiction in this neighborhood have learned this lesson well from the rest of the city and its government. This is Kensington, a place forsaken because its residents' lives do not matter to this city. 6 civic associations and our area CDCs came together in partnership with council members Quinones, Sanchez, and Squilla this year to tell this council and this government what we needed. We asked you to house those who were homeless. We asked you to use innovative treatment modalities and actually come meet people where they are. Instead of paying substance abuse providers to sit behind their safe walls while people in clear need operate in a state of constant crisis on our sidewalks and in our parks. We asked you to use all tools at hand to increase safety as residents and people experiencing homelessness and young men of color who've been lured into drug sales here are attacked and murdered with shocking regularity. And we asked you to clean the filth that lines our streets and has already led to outbreaks of disease borne by the feces that this government has told neighbors is their responsibility to clean. I got 8 poops on Hart Lane right now if anyone wants to see them. Got pictures and everything. While this city talks about expanding green space with 21st century technology both at the Delaware waterfront and on the Ben Franklin Parkway, it leaves my neighbors, the people experiencing and struggling with addiction, and the folks who have been drawn here to deal, to rot in filth as if it's the 19th century. This is not a question of technology or a lack of available solutions. Philadelphia already solved these problems more than 200 years ago. It's a question of political will and a racist neglect that views my neighbors as less than full citizens of this city. I don't live in Philadelphia. I live in a hellscape created by your indifference and the indifference of Mayor Kenny and of all those who spend their time happily chatting about improvements to affluent white neighborhoods while leaving my neighbors and all those residing here to die. So, if you read about my death one day in the paper, there's one more paragraph.
You can have my minute. You got my minute.
If you read about my death one day in the paper, or that of my wife, my mother, my neighbors, or the countless people here trapped in addiction and the pyramid scheme of drug sales, I want you to be clear on one thing. We've shown up for years to meeting after meeting to tell you what is happening and to beg for your help. You've left us to die. Our blood is on your hands. Every day that you leave us in this is a testament to the systemic racism that permeates every facet of this city and its government. I am tired of watching people claim to respect black and brown lives while refusing that respect to the black and brown lives of my community.
Thank you. Thank you. Shannon Farrell.
You got one of your minutes then.
Yeah, you got one of mine. So for 4 years, we've been meeting with the administration. I'm sorry.
Shannon, your name for the record.
Shannon Farrell, President of the Harrogate Civic Association. For 4 years, we've met with the city and we told them, if you don't act now and things don't change, it'll get violent. It has. More people are going to come and sleep on our streets and purchase drugs here. It has. And we were always under the belief that while we were meeting with them, they were working more and doing more for the people that were living on the streets, to find out that nobody's helping any of us. But we've demanded for 4 years housing, treatment, anything that would help. We've asked them to, I said to them, why, if we have hundreds of people living on the street, do we not see you out every day with intense outreach? But it doesn't happen. We never, how often do you see people out here from the city? I don't ever see them. Never. No. For 4 years, we begged, we pleaded. Yesterday, 2 people were shot in McPherson Square. Last night, a man was shot 17 times and killed on Glenwood Avenue. And this is all a result of the conditions that we live in and the ignorance of this administration. And last summer, I met with Mayor Kenny. We did a protest at K&A. And the first thing he tried to do was tell me how much money to use here, and then he yelled at me. Said he's only one man, he can't do this. But he has a whole administration and a whole city. He's the top guy. If he can't do it, nobody can. He won't come here. We've invited the mayor over and over again, and he will not come here because he simply doesn't care. Why else would you not come here? Because it's going to be hard? Look at what we're living like. It's hard for us, right? So he can't come and be uncomfortable and speak to us? He doesn't care. And that's the demands we need today before we leave, is that this mayor comes and walks down this avenue and comes to this park. And if he can't do that, he should step down. It's an old cliche. It's an old cliche to say resign if you can't do your job, but our living conditions are intolerable and horrible. He can't do his job, and he won't come here to listen to us and help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey O'Donnell, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Casey O'Donnell, and the mayor can find me at Allegheny and Emerald any day. As important as it is for us to give testimony, this city needs to hear what you guys have to say. What were you saying on your way over here today? Where's Jim Kenney? Right? We're asking for our mayor to come and stand with us. Look around the room. Brooke said it earlier. All of you have vastly different perspectives on what's going on, but you have a shared opinion about one thing, that every person here deserves safety, they deserve compassion. When needed, they deserve treatment, they deserve housing, and they do deserve a clean environment where kids can live and play. We are all in agreement about that. So I'm not going to give you a history lesson, because frankly I don't know it that well, but 170 years ago, this neighborhood was its own municipality. It was not part of Philadelphia like many townships and boroughs. And what that meant was there was nobody to call. There was no police force to call. There was no council person. We couldn't call a police officer and ask for help. Does that sound familiar? Yes. Right? There was no sanitation for this neighborhood. It was its own city. We're there again. The social contract in Philadelphia has deteriorated, where lower income neighborhoods do not get the benefits of government. You do not get your trash removed. Right? I'm not going to put them on blast, but one of the police leaders in this room said, we need clear direction from the city so we know what we can do and not do. The police aren't even sure what they can do for this neighborhood, right? And be assured that social contract is in place for Chestnut Hill. It is in place for Rittenhouse Square and Mount Airy, right? I sat, and Councilman Dom's not here, but I watched Councilman Dom walking his dog in Rittenhouse Square, and I wondered if there were needles all over this square, would he and his dog be here? And the answer is no. Thank you. So I want you to know two things, because it's not about what happens at city council hearings occasionally. Frankly, I'm not even sure words matter anymore, but I promised to these guys that I would come and repeat myself again and again and again. So about 5 weeks ago, we met with city leaders in another attempt to get some of these problems solved. And at the end of that meeting, I said, I don't want to exaggerate. We said, we don't want to exaggerate, but the tension is too high, and you need to do something now, or somebody's going to get hurt. And within a week, someone in this room got jumped in the 3200 block at an encampment, had his arm broke, not a peep. So last week, we met with that same group with other, more important leaders there from the city of Philadelphia. Eva, you remember this meeting, where we said, you didn't listen last time. You don't need a crystal ball to know somebody's going to die, but the blood's on your hands. And yesterday morning, 2 people got shot 100 yards from where we had the meeting. Still no peep. We need to do something now. If nothing else, Mayor Kenney needs to know he needs to come and stand with us now. He also needs to come and stand with people in their suffering and feel that, and see what the conditions are for people living in tents. Maybe he should open his backyard, right? Yeah. We need safe spaces for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. If we could now, I want to note for the record that we've been joined by Councilwoman Kendra Brooks. Thank you for attending this evening. It's okay. If we can now have the clerk call the next group from the first panel of witnesses.
Can we please have Bill McKinnon, Marnie Allman, and Brooke Feldman?
So we are going to ask that, if possible, that you limit your testimony to 3 minutes. I know that the testimony tonight is critically important, and we want to hear all of it. But if you could condense so that we can make sure we get everyone who signed up to testify, that we hear from each person. We have quite a lengthy list tonight, and we want to make sure we get to hear everyone. So that being said, Bill McKinney, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Bill McKinney. I'm the Executive Director of the New Kensington Community Development Corporation. I'm a 20-year resident of McPherson Square. You know, already I hope that folks have not just listened, but have heard the pain and trauma of the residents of Kensington. Because while we continue to listen to folks from outside the neighborhood, when it comes to decision-making time, we continue to ignore the residents with decades of information and collective history about various strategies and solutions to improve conditions in Kensington and in Philadelphia. 4 months ago, I wrote an op-ed in Plan Philly that essentially said that for decades we have been sold plans from city agencies that would supposedly alleviate suffering in Kensington, but were built for failure from their inception. These plans have achieved very few sustainable results that residents can actually see. After 20 years of interventions, racial disparities in areas ranging from housing to health outcomes have increased. And while every effort has claimed success at some point, none have had any form of measurable, sustainable success for residents, only for those leading the efforts. These plans have all been little p, moving things around plans, rather than the necessary big P plans, which are solutions. I not only am pointing my finger at the city, but I'm also pointing at nonprofits like myself, community groups, residents, quickly co-opted into these failed strategies through a little bit of access to power or a few dollars. I want to tell two quick stories. On Monday, while walking home from my office at Kensington and Somerset, as I passed the lots at 2800 Kensington, that is now an encampment, a man who I had met before, who was actively using and from Delaware, came to me in tears, declaring his suffering and lack of way forward, asking for help. Continuing home, when I got to my corner, I was met by a mother of 6 sweeping up needles in front of her home with her children, looking out from behind the security gate. She too was in tears and desperately asked me to help change the situation. Resident or someone in addiction, everyone out here is suffering. That night, I once again met with city officials and once again heard more about the past successful strategies than of the current failures. Tuesday morning, at my home at McPherson Square at 6:30 a.m., I woke to the sound of gunfire. I rushed outside to find 2 men shot. The first, limp and non-responsive, was quickly ushered away in a police car. The second, shot through the chest, had an unsheltered man literally holding his life in him by compressing the wound. I held the man's arm and tried to comfort him until the next police car came to take him away. When they did, the man that saved him stood up with the horror of the event on his face, literally unable to wash his hands. And I looked around at the 75 people who had slept in the park that night. I could see their years of trauma had just another layer added to it. Casey is correct. We have reverted back to gangs and tribes out here for survival. All gangs with money, and that includes the city, whether it's the mayor's office, managing director's office, police, council, DA, no one is aligned. Everyone fighting for turf in their way while the residents suffer. While the city can't get it together, I commend the residents and civics for doing what they could not in bringing together the community gangs of civics, nonprofits, CBOs, residents, to once again collectively say, we all deserve better. What can we do? We can stop being angry, dismissive or defensive at residents telling us that they are being traumatized by incomplete strategies that are supposed to help them. And we can stop expecting people to sit in their trauma and instead empower them so that they can begin to heal. I believe in Kensington. I believe in the power of our people. I appreciate everyone being here today, but I also know that almost everyone will go home to another place. I no longer am asking for a plan or help like others are. I'm asking for you to take a support role or to stay out of the way of those that are here every day and understand the problems and the solutions as well as the immediacy that is necessary to make change. Thank you.
Thank you. Marnie Allman.
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Marnie Alment-Lockery, and I run KIC at Kensington Independent Civic Association, and I have lived here on the 700 block of Willard Street since 1970. I've watched this neighborhood go up, come down, go up, and come down, but I have never seen it as low as it is now. I understand everybody in this room has feelings towards the people that are addicted out on the street. Everybody in this room, whether you want to admit it or not, has a friend or a family member that we don't talk about that is addicted to drugs or alcohol. We've all been there. We've all sat for the phone calls to come in the middle of the night to say, come identify your loved one at the city morgue. We know what it is. But they kept that dirty little secret hidden from us. It has never been allowed in Kensington to do what they are doing in front of our children and our elderly people. I have never sat on my street and with my mother and my neighbor and my grandchild and told somebody to slow down, they're going too fast on his ATV when he just came off doing his deal on the corner, and he turned around and put like he's gonna pull a gun and tell me this is his effing neighborhood, this is his hood, we have to go. I feel sorry for the police officers that are right currently in the 24th and 25th Police District. My sister has been a 30-year police officer. I have worked with many of the gentlemen sitting there. I remember when Inspector McGarrick was here, when they were actually allowed to arrest people. They could make a difference. We could call 911 and they came out and they did their job. Whether they went to jail or not, that was a judge's decision. That wasn't theirs. But they came out and they did their job and they made us feel safe. We, the residents, don't feel safe. And unfortunately, the people living in the tents and on the street, they're not safe anymore either. There is something that has to change. There is something that has to be done. The administration, the Department of Health, they can say whatever they want. We know the truth. Tumar, you are now the managing director. You are an appointment, and this is what I want to explain to everybody. He is an appointment by the mayor. The first time he disagrees, his job is done. The same with Brian Abernathy. And I knew Brian Abernathy for over 25 years. Believe me, we fought. I told him one time I was going to throw him out the second-story window of City Hall. But I knew he would do his job, and I knew I could fight with him honestly. Tumar, I know I can tell him to go scratch. Go kiss my ass. And I'll tell him that plenty of times. But I also know no matter what his personal feelings are, he has to follow the mayor's orders. The same with the police commissioner. She is not elected. She is here at the will of the mayor. When she doesn't do what he wants, when her gentlemen do not fall in line, she will be gone. The people that can be held accountable are the council people sitting behind us, the mayor, who cannot run again. Let's make this plain, people. We can call for his resignation all we want. He's done. His next position he's looking at is governor. Would we want him to be the governor of Pennsylvania? If this is what he's done to Philadelphia, imagine what he's going to do to the rest of the state. We, the community members, think that maybe some of the administration should have to move into an encampment. Maybe some of the administration should have to be moving in on Kensington Avenue. Maybe the administration should have to see what we deal with day in, day out, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Because when they are done at the end of the day from City Hall, when they are done from this meeting tonight, they're going to their homes where this is not on the street. We go back to the 700 block of Willard Street or to East Street. We go back to Aramingo Avenue and Brandsback Street and Hurley Street and over into Port Richmond. The council people get to go home where they have their nice little neighborhoods with their nice little security. We do not have that option. If the city wants to tell us how wonderful they're doing, they better move their asses down here and come live with us. And maybe then our children and our seniors will be safe like their children and their family members are. That's something maybe they should be thinking about. It's our lives that get threatened every day. It's our lives that go out and do cleanup. Clip came down and did a cleanup on Kensington Avenue on Saturday, and on Sunday it was just as filthy. So the answer is, you put dumpsters there. Last week they set the dumpsters on fire. This is not helping. The city is not helping. Unless the administration is going to move their butts down here and have to live day in, day out where we are doing, please don't tell us your plans are working, because every plan that we give them, every idea that we come up with, they tell us won't work. Well, we know what you are doing does not work. So why don't you try listening to the people that live here once? See what it really Bring it home, boy.
Thank you. Brooke, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Hi, Brooke Feldman. So I did submit written testimony, but I'm just going to speak about some of it because I've been cut off by council member Bass several times in these hearings to know that I will get cut off. So, before I begin, I think that it's really important that where this hearing started was hearing from the residents, from the people who live here and have to live with the consequences of the city's failures for many, many years, not just this administration, but for many years, and it's not okay. And so I appreciate that the community got to speak first for maybe the first time that I've ever seen. Has anyone seen it before? No. Okay. What I want to acknowledge, right, is that we have these competing needs. We have people who have, very intentionally been concentrated into Kensington. And there are some reasons for that would be another hearing when we talk about the war on drugs, the impact that that's had on Black and brown and poor communities like Kensington. But people are struggling, right? And so we have that, but then we also have the reality that what people who live in Kensington have been expected to tolerate for years now in worsening ways is not okay. And I sit here as somebody who, after this hearing ends and I walk back to my car at McPherson that I hope my radio will still be in when I get back to, right? I get to drive home to somewhere where I don't have to worry about that, where I don't have to worry about my radio being taken out of my car, and where I don't have to worry about my 10-year-old stepchild going outside to play, where she says, can I go get Rita's water ice? I don't have to worry about if she's going to come home. I don't have to worry about what she's going to be exposed to just walking out the door. I don't have to worry about having to use public transportation and all the things that kids will see during that journey, right? Like if you're waiting for the 3 or the 5, anywhere between, say like Cambria, like on down, like it is not okay for anybody. And I appreciate the word trauma was used because that's what it is. It's trauma. It's trauma when I'm sitting in a meeting with Bill, who was saying, we're done, right? Like, we're done with, sort of the special initiative and the 12-point plan and like doing the same thing, but calling it something different. We're done being asked to buy into these things while you tell us that you can't do the things that we want you to do, like no more. And then 12 hours later, Bill sends an email of 2 people who were shot right across the street from his house. And I read that email from the comfort of my home, where I've never seen any violence around my home. So it is really important to put that in context. And I say that as someone who is pretty known, I think, to folks in this room, as someone who fights for the people struggling with addiction and struggling with homelessness. But it doesn't mean that I don't care about others. And I can't believe that just happened, because I realized some important things to say. I want to just, real quick, I promise, there are things we know that will work today. And there are things that we can agree on. And for far too long, we spend so much time fighting about the things that we disagree on that we couldn't work on the things that we agree on. And the folks that are sitting over here who are in the current administration really benefited from being told, we need this, we need this. The advocate said that. The resident said this. People who support harm reduction want that. People who support, absence-based recovery want this. And we've all been fighting when really, we all need the city to show up. And it isn't like that each other's enemy, and if we work together, we actually have some pretty great ideas. And so one of the things that keeps coming up constantly, the idea of treatment, right? Like that we want to get folks into treatment when they say that they want it. There are so many barriers to people accessing treatment, and I know that a lot of you in this room have either walked through that experience yourself or walked through it with a loved one, and if you could tell me that was a seamless experience, that the moment your loved one said they wanted treatment, that you knew where to go, you went there, you were all treated with respect and dignity, that your loved one got what they needed, didn't need any special favors, no barriers, nothing. That rarely happens, rarely. And so one thing that actually has brought us together, ironically, is one barrier that the city can remove today. if it had the will. I've testified so many times that it makes me sick because we have like 1,000 other things we should be talking about. But the policy that was implemented by CBH that prohibited people from going outside to smoke cigarettes if they went into inpatient treatment. So it's been a longer remarks, but I'm a person, who struggled with addiction and also smoked cigarettes, right? And I was like a smoker. Like I was like the kind of smoker that when I found out Newport 100s cost the same as Newports, I was like, what? I'm smoking Newport 100s. And so I get it, right? I know what it's like to use cigarettes as sort of a coping strategy. And after I was able to develop healthier coping strategies in recovery, then I was able to stop smoking. That was just my path. So I stopped smoking, but it wasn't the moment I walked into a carceral treatment program where I have no autonomy, where it's triggering as hell for anyone who's had trauma, where I can't, do things I want to do, call people I want to call them. I'm not allowed to go outside. So now we have a system where people are told you can't go outside when you're in here. And it's just insane. So always use a disclaimer. I want people to quit smoking. I am not advocating for people to continue smoking. What I'm saying is that if we want people to have access to treatment, we need to make sure treatment works for people. And right now, if you're somebody who wants treatment, who doesn't want to die, who doesn't want to be one of the approximately 700 people who have died since the last time I talked about the same policy, I'm going to stop. We need options for those folks. And so what is amazing is that in talking with folks in the community and instead of trying to convince them to listen to my idea with this self-righteous kind of tone, to listen. And I discovered that many of you are like, what the hell are they doing? They're telling us we need to tolerate this. People need treatment, not jail, which I agree with. But then if people can't get into treatment, what does that mean? What that means is what you will see if you actually spend time in Kensington after this hearing and don't hightail your ass home where you don't have to worry about it. And so, last thing I would say is I was really passionate. I was going to stick to my time tonight, and I appreciate the grace. We came to the city repeatedly and said this policy is causing harm. There are people on the streets right now who want to go into treatment but said, I can't do it if they make me not smoke too. And then we watched them walk away. And for those of us who have watched our entire community dropping dead all around us, to the point that I've honestly not been able to count how many people I know who have died, it's not okay. We want people to get into treatment. And so we actually submitted research that was conducted that demonstrates that this policy is deterring some people from going into treatment, and it is causing some people to leave treatment prematurely. And what's amazing, right, the last thing I'll say is this, is that if the city would listen, if you would listen, we want people to stop smoking. I understand that. And it's a great goal, it was well-intended, but it's not working. And it's not okay to keep something that's not working when you have people telling you it's not working. And so just pause the policy, take a moment to listen to us, and start implementing the things that we're telling you in one voice works. How many people think that we should remove that barrier and help people get into treatment? Let people smoke if that's what they need for a minute. Is anyone with me? So thank you very much for your time. Please make sure to stay on top of this. And last I'll say, I am so grateful for those of you who have had, enough trust in advocates who don't live in your community, who are saying we want to work to you. Thank you so much, and we're not going anywhere. We're here with you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Clerk, please call the next panel. And I do want to note that we've been joined by Councilwoman Gim.
Could we please have Ryan Keller, Rosalind Lopez, and Kristen Bingham? And can you please try and limit your testimony? We have a lot to get through tonight.
Okay, that was Ryan Keller, Rosalind Lopez, and Christina Bingham, and Jordan Bingham. Oh, it says Christina, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. And if we could start with Ryan Keller, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Councilperson Bass, Council members Sanchez, Skula, Gim, Brooks, and O, thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank everybody for being here in Kensington and seeing what a lack of attention does to a community. My name's Ryan Keller. I'm the zoning chair of Harrogate Civic Association. I'm also a member of our PDAC and a block captain here in Harrogate and Port Richmond. I have grown up here and I've been here my entire life. I'm a child of the Philly Play Street program, and I've had the great pleasure of giving back to this community and seeing it grow. I've also seen it at its worst, where people have chased after me with knives because they didn't want a play street to happen on my street. And I didn't really care. But it's very sad to see how there's such a lack of attention from all of you over there. We've talked to you so many times. I've probably called Shannon a million times. I call her all the time. And I tell her all of my complaints. And it's absolutely disgusting, the lack of attention that our community sees. The black hole that is the drug market here in Kensington has taken many people from me. It has swallowed friends I grew up with, neighbors who I loved and thought of as family. The drug market here in Kensington also took my brother from me in 2018. He was swallowed up by a failure in our own government that was probably the hardest phone call I ever received. It was from my mother. I was actually in City Hall, council members, meeting with the Commissioner of Streets with Councilman Heenan when I worked there. And I can hear that scream probably until the day that I die. He passed from brain trauma after not being able to breathe for 6 hours on my couch from drugs that he bought at Kensington Avenue. He was a father of two and a very involved member of my community. And he was swallowed up by this drug market here in Kensington that we have let get so out of control. I'm sick, my family hurts, and I've seen no change. In fact, I've watched the situation get worse. Councilmember Sanchez, I actually took the time and tried to review your 2020 Restorative Investment Plan for Kensington Residents. We need these changes, but this is just the start. We need a clear plan that offers public users of narcotics a choice. You can seek shelter, start working, and begin to rebuild your life before drugs, or we need you to move along. We need solutions. This cannot go on any further. I feel bad for the public users of narcotics. They need to go home or start a home or seek shelter before they too are swallowed up by Kensington Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosalind Lopez, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yes, my name is Rosalind Lopez, but I'm going to turn around because I'm going to speak to you directly. They're not the ones who have to take care of the city. You do. Like I said, my name is Rosalind Lopez, and I am a longtime resident of Kensington. And like he was just talking about the Restorative Investment Plan, if you put the abbreviation, you're basically telling us to rest in peace. Okay? Many people have been hurt since the managing director's office had decided to work with Conrail to close the Conrail and lift those addicts out of the tracks and bring them into our communities, into our homes, into our businesses. A lot of people I've heard people getting hurt with having needle stick injuries, and unfortunately I am one of them, just recently. My thought was to get trigger happy and just eliminate all the damn addicts right now. But I like my freedom. You know, and I blame the city, and I blame Prevention Point, and I blame Angels in Motion because they also give out these needles. They're giving out the needles and they're not collecting them from the addicts. Okay, and if they cannot collect the needles, the syringes, because these addicts are too high to go to the nearest red box to dump their needles. Okay, I am currently seeking a lawyer to see if I can sue the city and Prevention Point and Angels in Motion for my injury. And if I can do it alone, then I'll do it as a class action suit with everybody else who's had a needle stick injury. Okay, this is totally unacceptable. I don't want any more promises. I want action. That restorative plan that you have, it looks all nice on paper, but it needs to be actually implemented, and stop blaming the mayor. Because the mayor can only take but so much of the blame. Look at yourselves. What are your actions? I understand a lot of us here in Kensington also have the blame because a lot of people don't freaking vote. Because they think that their vote don't matter. So residents need to stop blaming just the city when they need to blame themselves too for not voting. And they keep voting the same people over and over and over again. Okay? There's no change. All right, the encampment, I want to know what is the actual plan on the 18th when the evictions take place. Where are they going to go? Are they going to spill over to Port Richmond? Are they going to go to Fishtown? You know, or are they going to go to the back streets like they did when the Conrail was cleaned up? When you cleaned up Emerald Street, the tunnel, because of the gentrification, they only going to go to the back streets. That is not solving the problem. Okay, they need to be off our streets. They do not have a right to continue to infringe our public safety. Okay? They either get help or they should get to the O2 against their will, because obviously they're not in their right minds. And I don't give a damn what these other advocates for these addicts say. Okay? Because if all these addicts, Prevention Point, Operation Save Our City, think that they need help, then they need to take them the home with them.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you not to use profanity. Thank you.
All right? And the inequity in service that happens in Kensington needs to stop. Okay, that's been going on for decades too. You know, Squilla likes to listen to Anthony Giordano. When there's an encampment, he shuts it down real quick. Port Richmond talks about an encampment and he has excuses. Why is there an inequity? I don't understand that. That's happened, and that's what I told Port Richmond, that they need to keep on squealing so that they don't fall the way Kensington did. That's the end of that.
Thank you for your testimony. Christian or Jordan Bingham, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, my name is Christian Bingham. I'll be speaking for myself as well as my mother. Hello, my name is Christian Bingham. I'm a resident of Harrogate. We've been living here for 2 years, and to say it is shocking the things I've witnessed is an understatement. I've never seen anything like this. I often wonder if I even live in America. It feels more like a third world country. It's frightening and it's relentless, and I'm ashamed of our city and all of you for allowing this to happen. This is your failure. You have allowed a marginalized population to bear the weight of an issue that requires real solutions. Instead, you allow more people to come here, bring food, bring clothes, bandages for folk who do not live here. And all of it ends up as trash we constantly clean up. I've never lived in a community like this, and I'm ashamed that this is how I live. My mother has always had us being involved in helping our community, but this requires more help than we can give. I watch little kids who are forced to grow up thinking this is normal, and it honestly saddens me and frightens me that this is our future. Your lack of intentional effort to fix this problem is your testimony. And when these young people are old enough to be the stewards, decision makers, and caretakers of our society, what fruit will your testimony bear? What will your retirement look like? Because karma always has a way of finding its intended targets. When I grew up, my parents did not reward me for bad behavior. They set the standard and we were rewarded accordingly. When I didn't live up to their expectations, I was responded to in a way that steered me towards a better path. I do not see this happening here. In fact, I see these people being rewarded, uplifted, made to feel as if we have the responsibility to fix their issues. And I know for a fact that if the majority of of the users on the street were black and brown, we would not be offered resources, except for county jail. I lived in East Kensington and Center City since we moved here from New York City in 2004. And none of my former neighborhoods had to deal with this, so I want to know what can be done and see the disparity in how you feel and how you deal with various communities. And every single one of you have sent a very clear and loud message that white lives are what matters, and to you, and my black life does not. Hello, my name is Sonia Bingham. I couldn't be here in person today as I am admitting my daughter into her freshman year at Spelman. All of you have heard from me regarding the condition of my community. I say this to those of you who have aspirations for running for mayor or any other high office. Think again. I tell my kids all the time, God does not bless you with more until you are faithful over what little you have given. Why would we, the people, entrust an entire city or state to you and your failed government attempts? Your policies are flawed and inequitable. You create policy that directly and negatively impacts your residents, and when we cry out, if we do get a response from you, it is weak at best. You ask of us to do things you would never ask your family members or even yourself to do, such as stay in the fight after being attacked. Would you tell your daughter to stay in the fight if someone had just attempted to assault her with a knife, or your mother, or your wife? No, but you ask us to do these things because we don't matter to you. Here's my problem. I know that this is going to end. I know how this is going to end, and I know that these people are allowed to terrorize our communities. Will soon be sent packing, and it won't be because of any of your efforts. It will be because the white people are coming. Gentrification will fix this because white people matter to you, and the bitter nightmare will be a distant shadow in the minds of those who made it out to the other side. Those few black and brown people that clean this community every day, that pick up clothes, the food, the needles, the water bottles, the few black and brown people that clean urine and feces, who paint over graffiti, report the crimes, report quality of life issues to 311, all created by the white folk, will be allowed to stay here. Because even in their broke state, their life matters more than the law-abiding black or brown residents of Kensington. I know this will be eradicated from our neighborhood, but I want it fixed while black and brown people can still afford to live here. I want you to tell us that we fucking matter. I want you to validate our work and uplift a community that is setting the stage for white people to take it away from them, because it will be taken away. Because at the end of the day, white life matters. We see the investment into our rec centers, new posh developments and infrastructures. We see it. We know what's happening. And the only stupid people in this room are you if you think we don't see it. I'm done. It's truly pointless to continue to reach. I have, and 95% of you on the city council either do not respond or respond, say you want to do something, and do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If we could have the clerk call the next panel forward.
Could we please have Pedro Rodriguez and Kat Engelman?
Is Pedro here? No, I don't see him. Okay. Please state your name for the record, ma'am, and proceed with your testimony.
Kat Engelman. Good evening. My name is Kat Engelman, and I'm the Civic Engagement Coordinator at Youth United for Change, a community organization based in Kensington since the 90s. Through our community project known as VOTA, I have trained young people for 2 years to have 967 canvassing conversations with residents about issues our community faces and what can be done to change them. It is no secret that the challenges facing our neighborhood are significant. Even without a global pandemic, the conditions we face are far beyond what many in this city navigate on a regular basis. However, since COVID-19, we have seen just how much our problems can worsen when not given the appropriate supports. For instance, the rise in drug use or the record number of gun violence incidents. In the 2 years that we have been doing outreach with community members, the impact of inadequate sanitation supports and resources has only intensified. As residents all over the city have had to deal with a few days wait and trash pickup, this part of the city, on top of the delays, has had long-standing issues with an insurmountable amount of waste that comes back just as quickly as it was removed. Try walking down a block on any given day in the neighborhood when there are massive amounts of materials dumped on the corner, trash bags piling up, excessive litter, used needles, and even human waste. To be perfectly honest, these conditions are disgusting and wholly unnecessary. They present major health risks and safety concerns, and no human should have to live with them. Kensington deserves better. While many might say our community should just take care of the neighborhood better, and it's not the city's responsibility, we know that people can only do the best with what they've been given. In a neighborhood that has not seen meaningful investments that actually transform our community, it is negligent to expect us to go it alone. Our neighborhood has a nearly 50% poverty rate. Many in our community are battling addiction, homelessness, and other material insecurity. Most of us don't have either the resources or frankly the time to clean all of this up ourselves. This is absolutely a public health issue and it cannot improve without considerable resources dedicated to Kensington. Several components of Councilmember Quinones Sanchez's restorative plan speak directly to this issue and should be fully implemented in the neighborhood. Through our conversations with community members and our own experiences, we know that public trash cans in the neighborhood overflow with trash due to lack of residential trash cans and larger dumpsters in the community. The implementation of these new dumpsters and trash cans can speed up trash pickup in the neighborhood after a year of major delays, reduce danger to our sanitation workers picking up bags, as well as reduce pest and weather destruction of trash piles. Providing these trash cans can also reduce theft of personal trash cans in the neighborhood and support residents who do have trash cans to feel comfortable putting them out on trash days. Public dumpsters not only alleviate the issues of needing to dump larger amounts of trash, but also support our homeless community members to dispose of their waste in a way that's safe to everyone. We know Kensington residents deserve to live in a community that's protected from harm, but it can only happen when the city repairs a historic disinvestment in our community and actually implements the resources we need to become a supportive, healthy, and fulfilling place to live. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your testimony. I do want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilman Derek Green. We're going to switch up the witness list just a little bit. If the administration doesn't mind, we're going to ask them to hold on for 1 second. Thank you, Mr. Managing Director. And let's go to panel 4. We are going to ask that folks adhere to the 3-minute time limit now because we still have quite a ways to go in a short amount of time, and we do want to hear from the administration and hear their response to your concerns. So please stick to the 3 minutes if at all possible. Thank you so much.
Can we please have Gloria Castagna, Dennis Payne, and Andrea Damos?
Sean, I just want to let you know, Dennis Payne submitted written testimony and had to go because he's part of something else. So you want to keep calling the next people?
Yes, ma'am. Could we please have Darlene Burke?
Okay, why don't we start with Gloria? If you could please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Gloria Castagna. Everybody in the community know me as Smooches. I am with Somerset Neighbors for Better Living, NKCDC. I'm a PDAC member of the 24th. I have many, many hats in community involvement. The reason why I'm here today, I represent the residents in my community. We are frustrated with what's going on in the city right now, because I remember being in the panel about 5 or 6 years ago in reference to this issue at hand, which has gotten to the extreme. Anytime children don't feel safe in their own home, in their own community, it's time for a change. I'm not blaming anyone, but we are asking for help, because this is always a solution to everything. We can come together. Instead of sitting back and complaining, let's get together and rectify this issue at hand. These people, listen, I feed people every day, homeless, addicts, it doesn't matter. I'm a humanitarian first. But families need guidance in how to survive this pandemic that's going on. It's going too much. Anytime you find needles, feces, trash, piles of trash. I live out on Somerset in Kensington, and I have to walk the street because the sidewalk is filled with filth of trash. Listen, if there's any reason that the city don't have staff, this is an opportunity for people to get hired. There are people that are suffering, they lost their jobs, they need to provide for their families. If we can come hand in hand and get it together and fix it up, there's always a solution. One thing about us, and those that know me, I don't take no for an answer, because it's a solution to everything. This is getting extreme. It's not safe. We have witnessed shootings down the street in broad daylight. Kids don't need to witness that. They see enough on TV as it is. Every time 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock news come on, all you hear is shootings, people dying. It's ridiculous. Now, anytime that I have to tell my daughter it's gonna be okay, she don't wanna come out and play anymore, we can't even sit on a stoop like we used to. That's not right. We need to get it together, and we need to get together, find some type of solution. Don't blame everybody. Don't blame the city, because the city can't do it alone. It takes for us and the city to get together and find some type of solution, because I'm tired of hearing my kids say, "Mom, I don't want to live here no more." Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? Because everywhere you go is the same thing. But Kensington have a lot of good families. There's a lot of good things in Kensington that happen that the media don't get to see. And I'm tired of Kensington having a bad rep. So let's get it together and give Kensington back, because we deserve better and our families deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Andrea, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Dames. I'd like you all to ponder this question. Can you get milk from a hardware store? My son was told multiple times by various agencies and various individuals and multitudes of professionals just to do that. And we followed those directives, and we dutifully called and made attempts for whatever was recommended. Get into treatment, get into treatment, get into treatment. For us, that ended in a tragedy. My message is clear tonight. Treatment must be updated. The multi-pronged approach to the epidemic here in Kensington, along with the homelessness, requires many things. This is only one aspect that I am passionate about because of the way it affected myself, my son, my family. Currently, the treatment that has been offered for many people, I won't say every person seeking treatment, but for a good majority of people, has been treatment which was created many decades ago. Therefore, it is antiquated, it is unsafe, it is unethical, it is inhumane to expect certain individuals with what their body requires to be successful with the treatment that's being offered. I'm from Kensington, Fort Fishington. I was born and raised here. I was 5th generation in this area. We did move out of the area years ago, but have been brought back with various family, friends, and my employment as a certified recovery specialist. Not to mention assisting my own son within his addiction. I'm a daughter, a sister, an ex-wife, and a mother of those struggling with addiction. But it wasn't until I became a mom of a person struggling with addiction that I was all in, 150%, 24/7, every day, whatever it takes. I still, to this day, have to be that person for my son because he has nobody else. It's hard to put everything just in a few words, as so much has happened, but basically, we were seeking treatment very loudly, mind you, very loudly, begging people, officials from Harrisburg, top officials in the state, officials in Bucks County who knew me well from all of my volunteer work and my employment and my passion, people here in Philadelphia, people out of state. I called around the country, all times, days and nights, looking for help for my son. Chris is now 27. He spent 8 years struggling with opiates. He's a skateboarder. He injured his ankle, and that's how his addiction started. Of course, it went from pills to heroin very quickly, injectable heroin, and then in about, 2015, when the fentanyl started to be infiltrated into the drugs on the street, things started to change within treatment and within supports, and at that point, no one understood this. No one knew why. No one knew why Suboxone wasn't working. No one knew why Valley Forge wouldn't detox him because he had no opiates in his body, when clearly we knew he had opiates in his body. So things that happened 5 years ago that made no sense at the time, looking back, it all makes sense now. It all makes sense. I'm going totally off of what I wrote here, but...
We're going to ask you to wrap up, if you can.
So basically, we do not have to reinvent the wheel here because we found a doctor in Delaware that we were referred to by Dr. David Kelly, Medicaid officer for Pennsylvania. We were dismissed as a junkie from the street with his neurotic mother for months and months and months, 9 months. We begged for help. This doctor finally found a doctor in Delaware. We tried 7 times. What this doctor is doing is helping many people. However, my son was not in case that he was successful with. But basically, we're trying to bring anybody who's come up with solutions, such as Dr. Horton, and bring it to Pennsylvania, bring it to Philadelphia, bring it to our people who are suffering, because there are many people on the streets who do not want to be on the street. However, they cannot get milk from a hardware store. Please stop asking people to get milk from a hardware store. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Burton, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yes, my name is Darlene Burton. Hello, everyone. As I stated, my name is Darlene Burton. I have been a resident of Harrogate for 25 years. My message today is to let you know our community is being harmed dramatically by the containment and the facilitation of the non-residents that now live in our once beautiful neighborhood. Every year, 5 million needles are distributed out in our community under the umbrella of harm reduction. However, let me tell you unequivocally that the people who live, work, and go to school here are being harmed greatly. Our way of life is gone. We must now live in a drug-infested community that the city nor the state is willing to address. They are content with the residents facing and addressing these inhumane living conditions each day. For example, I looked out my window one day and seen a naked man in the alley. I yelled at him and said, "Why are you naked in the alley?" He replied, "I'm just changing my clothes." As if it's normal to be naked in public at 10 in the morning. Thank God no child walked by. They are having sex in our backyards and alleyways. They shoot up right in front of our children, for God's sake. Be informed that these are not regular down-on-your-luck homeless. They come here from all over, specifically to use drugs and live on our streets. Will someone please tell me, when did it become legal to do illegal drugs, let alone right out in public? Kensington is a disgrace. I'm sorry. And the city and the political officials should be ashamed of themselves for allowing Kensington to become a melting pot of drug users. We have repeatedly, for years, asked for help. I'm done with asking. I am demanding that something be done. No community should live as we do. We, the residents, are prisoners in our own homes. The unhoused drug users have assaulted many of us, myself included. A few weeks ago, I noticed a woman sleeping in Harrogate Park, surrounded by drug paraphernalia, while children played nearby. When I asked her to leave the park and please don't sleep here, she hurled an unknown liquid in my face. Please know and understand that no one should be subject to such abuse. Our children should not have to experience and live in such deplorable conditions in our neighborhood. The community I moved to 25 years ago for a better life has turned into a nightmare.
I thank you for your testimony, for being here today. Thank you.
Can we now please have Helen Bradford, Jamal Henderson, and Jasmine Velez?
Good evening. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Helen Bradford.
My name is Helen Bradford. Okay, I'm going to read what I wrote, except for a very brief introduction that I was born and raised until I was 14 in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. Moved out when my brother was stabbed with a knitting needle. That was many years ago. And then after coming back into the Philadelphia area, my in-laws spent a considerable amount of time every Thanksgiving on Schiller Street across from Harrogate Park, and my family played football in the park. That was a Thanksgiving tradition, 40-some years, that we still continue, but not in that park. Okay, so what I'm going to read is something everybody knows. Addiction is a disease. Access to medical treatment for this disease in so many cases is still difficult to obtain. Individuals seeking treatment are still waiting days to receive a bed. They are turned away without comfort meds, without any consideration of where that sick patient is going to go. This then leaves them unsafe and vulnerable, in withdrawal, homeless, and hungry. Back on the streets is not the ideal place for these individuals to go and be left on their own. If they can grab a few dollars from someone, they're going to spend it on a bag of substance rather than that bag of fast food. The substance lasts longer. If that patient goes back for admission, they're left to sit in a waiting room for hours on end, again in withdrawal, without comfort meds, many times not being admitted until past the time when prescribing medical personnel are present. They are then in acute withdrawal and they can't handle that, so then their addiction forces them to leave. Prescribing medical personnel needs to be available 24/7 at any and all treatment facilities. Then there are weekend holiday barriers that I've encountered with an individual who had private insurance. The facility said they needed to wait until Monday so they could verify coverage with the insurance carrier. That was absurd. Addiction is a proven medical disease. Would that be the case if someone needed to be hospitalized for diabetes? Again, an individual left with no place to go, unsafe and vulnerable. I believe that treatment facilities need to do more to strengthen family connections. Many of the patients have been estranged from their families. Yes, individuals have burned bridges, but most do have family members or loved ones who care, yet a new patient in a treatment facility cannot speak to anyone. And this issue of holding back caffeine and tobacco from patients in treatment centers is somewhat senseless, just causing more discomfort for the patient and more reason for them to not want to stay. Thank you. Regarding prescribed medication in jails or prisons, each and every prison facility should be required to administer an already prescribed medication, no matter what is prescribed. Prisons would administer insulin for a diabetic, and so therefore any patient on medical assisted treatment for addiction should continue to receive that prescribed medication as well. Addiction knows no boundaries. I've met many talented people and people with master's degrees in particular areas of Kensington that we are addressing here today. Many just don't see a value or worth in themselves any longer. And it may just take that one conversation that one may have with a caring person that may spark an influence that the individual may realize or remember that they do have self-worth. They do have talent. Many facilities go so deep into reading into a person rather than just listening to them, always wanting to separate mental health from addiction.
Ma'am, we're going to ask you to, we need you to wrap up just if you can.
The disease puts them and keeps them in a state that causes mental health issues. After all, no one says they want to be addicted to a substance when they grow up. I ask the government, in this case the city of Philadelphia, to stop uprooting these people from places that make them feel safe and secure until there is a safe and secure place for them to be, and or until the patient realizes that another place is safe for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. If we could have the next panelist state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Jamal Henderson. For a while, I worked at Prevention Point. And I did something that I've heard a lot of residents here tonight say, why don't we do? And that was people that I could help, people that I could take off the street, even if it was to my house, in order to get them in the care, treatment, whatever I did. However, we have a problem in this city with barriers, right? You can't access homeless services if you have an addiction issue because there's barriers. You can't access almost any service in this city without there being a barrier to stop you. And when you have something like addiction that requires extra care and extra treatment, those barriers need to be worked around or taken away. When it comes to being housed, when it comes to getting help, when it comes to getting the medical stuff that the homeless people need, those barriers need to be done away with. We've heard every resident say the same thing, and that's that they want their streets back. So it's up to the city to do it. It's up to the city to make sure that these things happen. Nobody's going to access your homeless services if they can't take care of themselves. Nobody's going to access your substance abuse services if they don't feel like they're being treated like a human. Nobody's accessing anything if they don't feel like they're being treated the way they should be treated. And to the citizens of Kensington, I wish there was more we could do. As an advocate and an activist, I'm only one person. I put my job on the line many times, taking people off the street to get them to the treatment that they needed. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Jasmine Velez, if we could have you state your name for the record and proceed.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmine Velez. I'm a lifelong resident of Kensington and a recent resident of Harrogate. There comes a time when we have to question the motivations of leaders in the city of Philadelphia. Ask yourselves, How many non-Black and brown communities face the quality of life issues that residents of Kensington and Harrogate experience every single day? I challenge you to imagine what it's like to wake up every morning with your first thoughts cautioning you that soon you'll be stepping over needles, human feces, mountains of trash, and drug paraphernalia. Even worse, imagine trying to keep your property clean or trying to find reprieve from the summer heat in the small amount of green spaces available to us, and finding that your health is now compromised because you've been pricked by an exposed needle. It doesn't take much for me to imagine any of these scenarios because they're my everyday life, along with my family, friends, and my community. This hits even closer to home when I think of my parents, who keep their property as neat as possible to combat the perceptions that the world has placed upon our community, how it's dirty, how it's dangerous, and how we choose to live in conditions that are a public health issue, and quite frankly, inhumane. I think of my stepfather and the fear he must have felt when he pricked his hand on a needle, trying to change the image of the community, who was doing nothing different than what affluent communities do every day, trying to keep their neighborhood clean. As a result, he has to take medications long-term to ensure that he isn't at risk for a disease, all because he wanted to clean in front of his home. Our community has been graceful, resilient, and accommodating to the challenges we've been presented with. And how many other communities can say that they've risen up, protested, got trained to use Narcan community-wide, sat in endless meetings with no real conversation, and still remain stoic in the face of it all? I challenge city officials, all of y'all, city leaders, to deal with the conditions that we face every single day. Thank you. I'm willing to bet that if this happened in their neighborhoods, the problems will be dealt with in a timely fashion. It's easy to tell residents to be patient behind the safety and confines of a desk, and it's easy to preach about cleanliness and action when you don't have to be the ones to continuously push it. We have a problem in our community, and it's not the residents, but rather generations of systemic violence and abandonment from leaders too complacent in their positions. Thank you. So I say it again, there comes a time when we must question our leaders, challenge them, and quite frankly, remove them from their positions if they're unable to serve all of their constituents. Thank you. If they're unable to serve all of their constituents with equity and fairness, the city has failed our community, continues to oppress our community. Apparently, brotherly love is only for the rich.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your testimony and for being here today. Mr. Clerk, if we could have you call the next panel of witnesses, please.
Could we please have Brian Belknap, Zane Knight, and David Malloy?
Thank you for being here. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Brian Belknap.
I'm Brian Belknap. I'm going to have to read this quick. Thank you for this chance to speak. I'm Brian Belknap. I've lived and worked in Kensington for 6 years. I work at McPherson Square Library. I'm part of the library's LEAP team. I'm here today to ask the council to improve the opportunities and conditions for youth and children of Kensington. There is a principle in ethics that the ability to reduce one's suffering
comes with a moral obligation to do so. We see this principle at work in the story of the Good Samaritan. In that story, we find that the ability to help makes someone your neighbor. I greet you today all as neighbors here in Kensington. Let me tell you about the condition of your fellow neighbors. Kensington is a harmful environment. It's psychologically harmful. Our library has a sewing program. I've had multiple children recoil at the mention of a needle. I have to explain to them that there are different kinds of needles because their experience in Kensington is dominated by warnings of the ever-present syringes. Families have told me that their children have been traumatized by seeing open-air injections and are afraid to come to their library as a result. Kensington is physically dangerous. Families on my block have negotiated with the local drug crew to move to the other end of the street away from their children. A few weeks ago, there was a shooting at this new location. My neighbor directly across the street was killed in that incident. One of the teenagers that regularly attends my program was shot last summer in a separate incident. The youth of Kensington don't have equity of educational access. When I started at McPherson Square, middle schoolers would tell me, Mr. Bryan, I'm an academy kid. I learned that was them self-describing themselves as bad kids. That's a lesson that they learned at middle school here in Kensington. The youth of Kensington don't have equity of career training. In 2009, I was put together a proposal to bring a program here, and the city's primary teen employment program is PYN. They have priority zones, and I noticed that 1934 was not a priority zone. 19125 is a priority zone. When I asked why we were not a priority zone, I got a 3-card Monty about who actually was responsible for that decision. I didn't see the latest proposal, but in 2020, we're still not a priority zone. I didn't see the latest one because of COVID. But it still may be the case that the city, the primary teen employment program in the city does not view Kensington as a priority. The problems of Kensington are not because the residents don't care. They're not because we don't protect each other. They're not because we lack dedicated educators. They're not because we lack stellar programs. The problems stem from systematic racism and political neglect. Members of the council, Kensington lies bleeding in a ditch. Will you tell us that this is not your neighborhood and walk by? Will you present us with a large cardboard check and then wash your hands of our plight? Or will you commit to stay with us and be with us until we're back on our feet? The answers in Kensington are not easy. They require political commitment. But make no mistake, my questions to you are moral and not political. You are our neighbor. Will you commit to improving the opportunities and conditions of the youth of Kensington? I thank you for your time, and I ask you to do the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Zane Knight.
Hello, my name is Zane Knight. Before I read my testimony, I want to touch on one issue that I feel like I've heard many people discuss tonight, and that is the issue of drug use, which I believe, is been found to be a disease and not a choice, and it needs to be treated as such. And I feel like there is a lot of sentiment, Reagan-era drug war sentiment, and I believe we can all say that that drug war has failed, and we do not need to treat this as a drug war. We need to treat this as an epidemic. To move forward to why we're all here tonight, my name is Zane Knight, as I said. I'm an activist and organizer, but most importantly today, I'm a resident of Kensington in the Norris Square neighborhood. I'd like my testimony to start off by saying I agree with the premise of Resolution 200403 and most of what is in it. I believe the city should and always should be looking into what it can do and all it can do to help those less fortunate, in this case, in the Kensington area. I agree especially that residents of Kensington need, quote, frequent trash pickups, alleyway cleaning and lighting, the provision of cleaning supplies and trash receptacles similar to the Temple Area Fill a Can program, safe school corridors and youth programs that provide safe after-school, summer, and employment environments, reclamation of vacant and blighted properties, unquote. However, I vehemently disagree and reject the notion that these underprivileged communities, which are largely minority communities, need further policing and a greater police presence. Whether folks agree with me or not, the fact is these areas already see far higher police presence than many other areas of the city, and we have seen it does not reduce crime. The policing section of this resolution sounds like nothing more than an excuse to increase police presence in Kensington, which will only result in minority folks and homeless communities and individuals being further harassed. We need better community safety measures and less policing of residents who are being treated like criminals. I call for the council to remove this section and language from the resolution to prevent the harassment of our communities. Respectfully, this resolution does not do a fraction of what is needed in Kensington. We do not need any more hearings. We do not need another committee. These issues have been looked into already on levels far larger than on a local city level. So we already know what these people need. We don't need to continue to look any further for answers. We know what needs to be done for these communities and underprivileged folks. These people, both community members and homeless folks, need resources. They need housing. They need free health care, including rehab services. They need to not be harassed and displaced by this city and its officials every time they find somewhere to rest their head at night. I'm here to tell both city council and community members, if they don't want to see people on the streets, if they don't want open drug use, a universal housing policy would fix all of that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
I wasn't finished, I'm sorry.
I'd like to
ask...
Excuse me, sir, you're actually over, so if you could begin to summarize your comments, we'd appreciate it. No, if you want to summarize, go ahead. If you want to wrap up and summarize, please do.
Okay, this is my last paragraph. I'd like to ask any council members who support displacing and evicting the encampments where they expect these people to go. These people have nowhere to go. They have no one to turn to except for each other, and yet the city's answer to these people sleeping on the streets is to simply move them out of sight and out of mind under the guise of quality of life arguments. It is shameful. I call this administration to put forward adequate legislation to actually address these issues and stop looking into how we can help. One of the council members at this hearing today was elected on a promise of rent control, and that council member walked back that legislation 3 months after taking office. And she is not alone. Many other members of the council have ties to developers, be it through family connections or campaign funding. I have to wonder what's the reason we don't see rent control. If that's the reason we didn't immediately end the tax abatement as opposed to a phase out. If that's the reason every developer uses the AMI for the entire county of Philadelphia when they determine the price of an affordable one-bedroom unit in this area to be over $1,700. I think it might have something to do with that funding. I yield my time.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. David Malloy, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yes, ma'am. My name is David Malloy. I am the Mobile Service Director for Marquee Parkside Recovery. So I just wanted to talk a little bit. I know this might come as like a curveball in a lot of the testimony. I want to begin by saying that I don't think you're human if you didn't feel all the pain and the anguish that everybody was kind of speaking on tonight. I can speak for my team and the people that are in Kensington. We see it every day. We know it's a challenge. We've been down in Kensington working with the Police Assisted Diversion Program for the last several years. So on average, especially over the last 3 months, and I want to focus on the last 3 months, we've been able to connect between 60 and 80 individuals to inpatient levels of care, whether that be medication-assisted treatment or what have you. To be fair and to be frank and fully transparent, many of those individuals leave treatment against medical advice for a lot of different reasons. But we're out there. We're out there every day. You probably see people with the purple shirts on going up and down the Ave. We want the community to know that we are there. I want the city folks to know that we are definitely here as partners to find any way that we can find barriers that we can remove. Some of the ideas that we've been kicking around that have been effective is using some of our folks in the city to help connect us with some of the out-of-county providers. Because one of the challenges, and I'm sure the folks here in the front that started this meeting tonight will tell you, is a lot of the folks that are in the community are not from that neighborhood. Right? So we're trying to partner with out-of-county network providers to get folks from that position out to where they came from. And I'll be honest, it's not an easy task. It's something that takes a lot of creativity. It takes a lot of late nights, weird phone calls, checking to make sure somebody that's going on a bus from Kensington to North Carolina, make sure they get to where they're going, and they might call you at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, Chief, I lost my ticket. So then we got to talk them through the process of getting an electronic ticket and making sure that he can get back on the bus and seeing that through all the way to the end. Not an easy task. And I think it's something that if we continue to mimic it and we continue to partner with our other providers that we're there with, which is Salvation Army and Prevention Point, we can take some of these innovative ideas and kick them up to the next level. And I think it starts with the removal of barriers. So that's my testimony. Thanks.
Thank you for your testimony. If we can have the clerk call the last panel.
Can we please have Rebecca Fabian, Jennifer Acosta, and Salem Snow? I apologize.
That's Rebecca, Jennifer, and Salem. I might be missing someone. Okay. Why don't we start, Rebecca? If you want to state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Fabiano, and for the last 5 years, my organization, Fab Youth Philly, has been running the Play Captain Initiative, a summer job program for teens throughout the city, and in particular in Kensington. The program is funded by the William Penn Foundation and Drexel University. We're a key partner of Parks and Recreation Play Street program. We're considered one of the critical components that creates the status of enhanced play streets with a focus on literacy. I've been a resident of Kensington since 2007 and very much aware of the extreme challenges residents, as well as those of us providing services, face in achieving our mission. At face value, it looks like our program was a success this summer. We gave out hundreds of books, provided 300 hours of free programming to about 35 children, and we partnered with organizations like the Free Library, Treehouse Books, and the Sierra Show to provide additional programming. I suppose if you count those things and the fact we kept everyone from getting COVID and we kept our teens and children safe from injury or worse, then it was a success. However, let me tell you what also happened this summer. It's our goal to hire people from the neighborhoods where we work. Regrettably, we were only able to hire 7 people this summer from Kensington, 5 youth and 2 adults. That's 13% of our goal of 36 people. And we were only able to provide programming on 3 out of the 20 approved play streets. That's 15% of the total number of play streets. I walk to and from every single play street to create the walking routes the teens take to and from each street, and I share that information with the CRO and the captain to make sure they agree those are the best and safest routes for our teens. Some years we've had great success with support from the 24th. Unfortunately, this year, it took multiple attempts before I got a response and never got the support I needed. This summer, I had to eliminate street after street after street, not because the designated play street itself was a problem, but because walking along many of the streets of Kensington is like a scene from a horror film. It is nearly impossible for me and my colleague, just the two of us, to walk down the streets. They could be as large as Allegheny or as local as streets like Hilton or Westmoreland. There was no way a group of teens and their shopping carts could get through past the piles of trash, people selling drugs, people smoking crack or shooting up, either into themselves or someone else, people passed out from selling or using drugs. And I'm just talking logistics. I'm not even talking about the stress and trauma of having to navigate that all day as part of their job. Some of our favorite, most popular play streets on the north side of Kensington and east side of Allegheny, north side of Allegheny, east side of Kensington, neither of those streets are navigable, so they were eliminated. So very quickly this summer, those 20 play streets became 12, which became 8, which became 6. And ultimately, we were only able to identify 3 streets where we could somewhat safely provide our programming and walk to and from each day. During our interviews, we asked candidates if they're willing to work in any of the neighborhoods where we run programming, and 2 candidates flat out said they would not work in Kensington. During youth recruitment, parents of teens we've worked with in the past said they were not letting their kids walk through Kensington this summer. And during one of our information sessions, a resident of Kensington said it sounded like a great opportunity, but they would not let their teen walk down Allegheny or Kensington Ave, which they would need to get to in order to get to our office on East Street. After one day of training, the parent of the play captain called and said her son would not be coming back because the walk was too traumatizing. It makes me sad and it makes me angry that the city has written this neighborhood off and is willing to let opportunities as this slip away. Things like this never happen in other parts of the city. When can residents expect relief, and when can organizations like ours get support to meet our mission?
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Last call for Jennifer Acosta. Jennifer? No? Okay. Salem Snow, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
My name is Salem Snow. I am a local activist. I am a candidate for Congress here in our 2nd district. But most importantly, I am a longtime Kensington resident. Our housing and wealth inequality issues in Kensington are personal to me. Like many of us here in Kensington, I grew up in deep poverty. And the average income in our district is only around $20,000 a year for an individual. That's not enough to pay rent, and it's certainly not enough to cover living expenses. The opioid crisis is also personal to me. Addiction runs on both sides of my family, and I have had multiple friends and neighbors die from overdoses over the years. I can count on one hand the amount of friends and family that have survived addiction disease, and I have lost a lot more than that have lived. I have been privileged enough to not suffer from addiction disease, but I have seen what it does to people, what it does to their families, and what it does to our communities. And I care very deeply for these folks in Kensington, both the housed who have to deal with these unfathomable conditions, as well as the unhoused who are dealing with unfathomable conditions. This is not a one or the other issue. This is an all of us issue, and this is not a political issue, it's an ethical issue. And to be clear, it is people of color and LGBTQ people who are disproportionately impacted by the living conditions that we see here. This is a justice issue, and Kensington has seen no justice. I also want to say that there's been this focus on finding solutions, but we don't need to find solutions. They've already been found, they've been executed in places all over the world, and they've already worked. We do not need to find any more solutions. We have them. We have to implement the solutions that have already been found. The hard work has already been done. It is literally cheaper to house everyone than it is to leave people unhoused and constantly police and displace them. This is not complicated. In Finland, They implemented housing for all legislation, and they gave everyone housing and free counseling, and over 80% of the people that participated in that program recovered and reached full stability. All we have to do is implement that on a citywide level here, and that's already started in places like Houston, Texas. They slashed their homeless population by over half almost immediately with one policy implementation. So my point here is that we already have the solutions. We just need city council to implement them. So the question then becomes, why have you not implemented these policies? Because I know you're aware that they've been implemented and that they've worked. So that's the question that I want to leave with, because the people of Kensington need justice. Both the houseless people and the housed, we all need justice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. And if we could have the clerk call the last panel, last folks who have signed up to speak, and then we'll do the administration.
Can we please have Rosalind Pichardo?
Sean.
Thanks everybody for showing up today and showing out, and also making it very clear how disappointed we are in the lack of action of city officials. It's frustrating.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Can we have you state your name just for the record and proceed?
Rosalind Pichardo. So I've experienced enough trauma in this city. It's frustrating, it's sad, and it shows that the city officials don't give a fuck about Kensington.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you not to use profanity, please.
Carry on. I'm frustrated at the fact that I am a Kensington resident who have reversed 776 overdoses, plugged up 2 gunshot wounds, couple stab wounds. Meanwhile, folks get to go home in their comfortable homes while we suffer. Resolutions, meetings. I'm tired of it. These empty promises. Empty promises. We're walking over people all over Kensington. Empty promises. The murder rate, 326 homicides, up 26%. It's despicable. It's frustrating. It's overwhelming. It's sad. I watch every day my mom mourn the loss of my brother. Cases unsolved. Watch my friends mourn the loss of my boyfriend. Case solved. This city has failed us. This city officials have failed all of us. And it's time to hold folks accountable. What's so overwhelming and sad about this all is that the folks who are buying property here, who are gentrifying the community, have more say than the Kensington residents. People are lining their pockets at the expense of us. And that's frustrating. It's sad. All these new people coming into our community, and they're giving them more attention than us. Lehigh looks nice, don't it? Those houses look real nice. Meanwhile, we're walking over feces. It's horrible. And I can look at everyone dead in the eye and say, y'all failed us. Because I can, because I'm a Kensington resident. And this is what I experience every freaking day. While they go to their nice homes, guess what? I'm in Kensington. My brother's case is unsolved. There's homeless folks out here being beat up, stabbed, shot. That's my time.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to switch gears just a little bit. Mr. Clark, if you could call forward the next panel from the administration.
Could we please have Tumar Alexander, the managing director, and Jill Bowman? Or is it just you, sir? Yeah.
Good evening, Chairwoman Bass, and
Good
members
evening.
of City Council's Committee on Public Health and Human Services. My name is Tumar Alexander, Managing Director for the city. I will provide testimony on behalf of the administration. I've submitted longer written and prepared testimony, and in the interest of time, I will be short. Thank you all for the opportunity for me to be able to come here and be able to sit here and be able to hear the community's anger, be able to hear your hurt, be able to hear your pain. I want you to know that on behalf of the Managing Director's office, behalf of the Mayor's office, behalf of the city and the folks who work for the city and responsible for providing services to the entire city, we hear you. And it's painful to hear you, right? It's painful to know that there's been a generation of young people that have to walk through the conditions that they need to walk through in their communities to get to school, to get to playgrounds. It's painful to know that those amenities aren't available or accessible or safe enough for some people, some adults, to allow their kids to use. And it particularly hurts me because I'm a lifelong resident of the city and I did not get into government to be a person who, I got into government to make a change. I got into government, hopefully, to make a difference. And hopefully I wake up each and every day knowing that that's my goal and try to go to sleep at night understanding that that's my goal and that's my intent. I understand that nothing I can say tonight will give you all comfort. I was planning to provide some updates on the Restorative Investment Plan that Council Members Sanchez and Squilla was very instrumental in funding, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I think you all know we talk, I think, enough, and we are here enough that you all know all of the things we're trying to do. I think you all know that I understand from hearing tonight, I understand from reading the emails, and I understand from getting the text message and the calls that we have a lot more work to do in this community. I will say you all hold us accountable, but do it with us. We can't do it. We can't do it without you all. We can't do it fighting against you all. We can't do it without the partnership with all of the folks behind me. We can't do it without the partnership with the folks who are over there in that corner, who all work for government, who all, just like me, want to make a difference each and every day, who all, we see the pain, we feel the pain, we talk about how we need to do better, what can we do to do better. I feel the frustration of participating in cleanups or knowing that cleanups happen and then riding by an hour later and seeing the conditions just the same way that we left it before. I'm here to tell you that we have folks who are not in this room who are responsible for sanitation and cleaning, who go to sleep at night trying to think of creative ways to help you all. So when you see those dumpsters that folks don't use or that folks set on fire, that was the effort of a person who said, how can we be better in providing services to this neighborhood and to this community? I brought all of my administration here, so the Office of Homeless Services, our Community Behavioral Health Program, our Police Department, our Department of Parks and Rec, our community service agencies, so we can hear you, so we can try to answer some of your questions. I know you all, there's a lot of things going on in this community that we need to address. A lot of questions came up tonight around enforcement. I know we have Chief Inspector McCarrick who could talk a little bit about that if folks want to hear. So I heard some questions around the encampment resolution process and policy. As many of you know, those encampments that you mentioned, I've heard various people describe them, some on the 3200 block in Kensington, some on Lehigh, some further down Kensington Avenue. August 18th, we're going to work together with a bunch of service providers, with our police department, with youth community, and with advocates to resolve those encampments. So try to make this area safer for folks to transverse back and forth, whether they're going to work, play, go to school, or just come out of their house and go in that commercial corridor and want to be able to use those businesses. Heard a lot, and Jill could talk to a lot around removing the barriers to treatment, providing better access to treatment. That gentleman who spoke in a purple shirt, I thank you for your passion and for your heart and for the services that you're trying to provide out in this community. And then I think we heard some questions around needle distribution, and just those services that folks sort of couched under harm reduction. So, council members, I'm following your direction on how you want us best to present or best to answer questions or some of the concerns and the issues that came up tonight.
So I'm going to yield that question to Councilwoman Sanchez and Councilman Squilla for direction.
Thank you, Tumar, and to the administration for joining us here today, and thank you to our chairwoman and our council colleagues for allowing us to hear from the public first. This is a continuation of, as some people have said, many, many different discussions. There is, and I think the biggest question for us is the containment strategy, and we're going to call it containment, although this is a citywide situation, the unwillingness of the administration to have and enforce an encampment strategy that offers people real access to housing and, as you've heard, real access to treatment.
Good. Eva, do you want to start that? And I'm probably going to ask Chief McCarthy to come up a little closer to be able to talk a little bit about enforcement.
Sure. Good evening. For the record, Eva Gladstein, Deputy Managing Director for Health and Human Services. I just wanted to start by echoing some of what Tumar said. I've been in many conversations that have been referred to tonight, 4 years of meetings with civic associations, civic leaders, the Community Development Corporation. I spent the first 20 years of my career organizing low-income tenants. I came into government not knowing whether or not I'd be able to have a greater, better impact. I stayed in government because I felt I could, and yet I've had many tough assignments, and I have not ever before experienced the difficulty of finding common solutions to these very intransigent problems that this community is experiencing. We have always worked to try to find what I would call solutions, answers, innovation pilots. They work. If they don't work, then if they work, we scale them. If they don't work, we try something else that work both for the people who are housed and unhoused in this neighborhood. We've made some small inroads working together with many of you, but we have seen they're not big enough, and we've seen a tremendous backslide, and we all acknowledge that. The last year, the introduction of fentanyl was one major impact. COVID was another major impact. And frankly, this is what keeps me up at night. I know I'm not experiencing anything near the trauma of being a resident here, either housed or unhoused, but I just wanted to acknowledge that. What I want to say about housing is that we have worked very hard. I'm going to do 1 minute of civics, if you'll bear with me. The departments that I oversee, the Office of Homeless Services, Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services, Public Health, the Office of Community Empowerment and Opportunity, and our Mayor's Commission on Aging. So we bear tremendous responsibility and are responsible for many, many services. We are not the full providers of housing resources in the city, and many of the people in this room know that. There's a planning and development department that is supports with different resources the development of affordable housing, and that's been referenced earlier tonight in terms of what the income limits may or may not be. The Office of Homeless Services, we have been working to transform from being an office that simply provides what we would all call shelter, others might call it emergency housing, to an office that can prevent homelessness, and an office that can provide a pathway, a roadmap out of homelessness. We have worked to create new, innovative, and model programs with the resources that we have. We have created hundreds of new units. We were able to receive some housing resources a few years ago that we've sustained, which created 60 beds, which were operated on Kensington Avenue by Prevention Point. At the request of the community, they moved to Beacon House on the Episcopal campus just a few months ago. We've created and supported, frankly, some of the people in this room to provide low or no barrier housing. It is nowhere near enough, and we are continuing to strive to create some of those other resources, including Housing First resources, rapid rehousing, housing people off the street directly through rent supplements and other resources. And we'll continue to do that with the partners in this room, with support from the administration, with support from City Council, and with our other partners in terms of housing. I think that we face barriers, though, which I think are acknowledged here. This is a citywide problem in terms of opioid use in general and addiction, and yet it is very hard to place treatment facilities. It is very hard to place housing resources in communities. I know this community feels overburdened, and I understand that, but we face a lot of obstacles when we are trying to create new housing opportunities and new treatment resources, be that for 5 people, frankly, or be it for 50 people or 100 people. So that is one of the ways, and I think you as a community, particularly in the last year, have come together to recognize common issues and ways that both housed people and unhoused people can benefit. And I think that's, is something that's very important and foundational. We need to work with people in other neighborhoods to be able to do the same so that we can build on what we have started. It's small, but it's promising, and I think we have the opportunity for expansion with the right resources and with the kind of support this community just tonight has shown by bringing together people who, have different points of view in many ways, but also have some common interest in making sure that people who need housing and need treatment can get it.
Jill, do you want to talk about the barriers to treatment, some of the things you're trying to do?
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of things. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to thank everybody for sharing with us.
Dr. Bowen, please state your name for the record.
Dr. Jill Bowen, Commissioner, Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. I've been in that role a short time, but in that time, I've been listening and prioritizing what people are telling us from the community. I think some of the folks here know that because I've been in conversations with them. I think that the amount of time it takes is very frustrating for folks. But I think also that people don't know DBH-IDS and what all we represent and what programs we're supporting. Some of the programs you heard tonight that people seem to feel are helpful are funded and supported by DBH-IDS. We've got Community Wellness Engagement Unit, hi guys, who are here with us, out there every day. We built that program in part because we heard about what Kensingtonians felt was the most important challenges and the needs were. And also from hearings, other hearings like this one, where council members made some suggestions. So the Community Wellness Engagement Unit grew out of the suggestions from the community and started in Kensington, grew in Kensington and is staffed by folks from Kensington. That is the type of program that we are trying to put on the ground. We also are focused on trauma, equity, and community, and that has been my priority and my vision since I came into this role about 7 months back. So I had a lot of data that I was going to go through tonight if there were specific questions, but I agree with Tumar that I think we're really, it's really about a bigger issue here, and I think it would be really helpful for me and some of my team to be coming out and walking through some of the issues in the programs and what we have on the ground. What are DBH-IDS programs? How are they helping? Which ones are useful? And I think some of them might surprise you that they are DBH-IDS programs. The mobile programs are DBH-IDS programs. And since I was asked to speak about access, there isn't any barrier that is okay. So when I hear about the cigarette smoking as a barrier, very intensively working on that, talked to the state about that this past week, trying to see where we might be able to understand the policy challenges, the implementation challenges, and the outcomes. But I do think that the emphasis on mobile, bringing, and I heard some of you talk about that tonight, bringing the treatment to where people are, making it easier for them to get into treatment. So we have a number of mobile initiatives on the ground. The one you heard about, which was the co-response, it included CAD, it included the community, the crisis intervention response teams. That team is a DBH-IDS supported team, and we're going to be expanding that program. Also expanding the community crisis mobile, extensively expanding that. But also expanding a new opportunity. We're the first ones in Pennsylvania to even bring it. We brought it to the DEA and to SAMHSA, is to look at the MAT mobile opportunity. So getting the treatment to where people are and using the newest approved processes that we have. We're first on the ground as soon as we see it. We pushed the regulations during COVID, and we are pushing to have them continue to be acceptable for us to use. So this is just a general, this is not getting into really the specifics that you may want to talk about. I don't know if this is the best setting for it, but access, mobility as an approach, and also looking at different approaches to treatment, like long-acting injectable medication, MAT medication. Different approaches that make it easier for people to succeed. Because what we're interested in is long-term recovery. We're interested in people succeeding in their recovery. We can tell you about the homeless outreach teams and the success they have, but we hear from you that no matter what success that has, you don't see that success. So what we're looking for then, successes for the individuals that they're working with who remain housed for a significant period of time after they come in. So there are some data points that point to that, but I'm not sure that that's helpful for you when you're experiencing what you're experiencing and what you shared with us tonight.
So folks, we're gonna, we wanna get to some specific questions that were asked, and one of them is the enforcement policy. But before we get there, for the managing director, Tumar, I think the first request as the protesters or some of our civic leaders came in was the unwillingness of the mayor to come here and face the residents of Kensington. But let's go to the policy situation. When we had...
Councilwoman,
two more, because I want you to address the containment strategy of Kensington. When we had these challenges at the airport, when we had them at the Parkway, the mayor within 3 days said, this is unacceptable. Within 3 days. This is year 4. Please walk us through how the encampment policy is going to be enforced and how long will that take?
well, let me start off by saying I don't think it's a containment strategy, but I'm not. That's fair if folks feel that way. So
we went from 300 people to 800 unhoused people. That's containment.
Hold on 1 second, please. Hold on, everybody.
So
Folks, can we let the managing director respond to the question, and again, the enforcement of an encampment policy? If this is not a containment strategy, when can Kensington be restored?
okay, thank you. First, let me start off by saying, and I'll have Eva talk more about the encampment policy itself. Similar to, I guess, what you've mentioned at the airport and some center city encampments, we resolved encampments on Emerald and Tulip, similar in the same way, right? We are legally mandated with certain things we have to do. We have to post those notices for a series of time to allow folks to give notice that they trespassing. They're trespassing. We need to be able to. They're trespassing, and the city's going to come in and resolve on a certain date. We set those dates. At times, those dates have slipped for various reasons. Sometimes they've slipped because folks have taken us to court. Sometimes they've slipped because we've worked with the affected communities to say, I know we said we would do it on X date, but talking to you all, you said don't do it on this day. It's better if we do it on another date certain, so we've tried that. I'm not talking about specific instances. I'm talking about reasons why in past encampments, sometimes those dates slip. We set a date for this area, this neighborhood, which is August 18th. I've told several of you all, I'm telling the whole group right now, we are moving on August 18th, regardless of any condition. And we would absolutely appreciate that.
Folks,
we would absolutely appreciate that.
Folks, this is an official hearing, and we have to get all of this stuff on the record. Please allow Tamar Alexander to respond.
Thank you. We would absolutely appreciate folks coming out there on that day. But what we do is and what we've been doing since we've posted, we've been going to those places, offering those folk services. We have to, as a part of a federal court, we have to make sure when we post those encampments, however many people are in those encampments, is how many residential opportunities we have for them. So that's treatment beds, that's shelter beds, that's service beds. We've cleared all those up for all of those folks in those encampments. I can't force them to come take advantage of that. We've tried to bombard them day in, day out, week in, week out, leading up to the 18th. That you guys got to move from here. Here's the opportunities if you want to avail yourself to it. It's slow and steady work, as I think the gentleman in the purple shirt said. I would be lying if I tell you that any amount, 15, 20, 30% of those folks take us up on those services. We continue to go back and forth with them and offer those services, be able to avail themselves of those services. We're going to do that leading up into and on that date, on the 18th, and be able to do that. We're going to. That's the way we resolve. That's the way we resolve encampments. We don't come in. with police and, you know, just like beat up people or kick people out. We try to have a service approach. That's what we do. But at the same time, once that morning comes and once we're ready to go, those folks, hopefully they could get it. They want to avail themselves into those services. If not, they have to get out of that location, and we'll do that. And then once they're out of that location, it's up to all of us, and especially on the government, especially on police, especially on the agencies that's out here and is represented, to be able to hold those areas and not let those encampments reform. That's been a problem in the past. I've seen some of the encampments we cleaned start back up. I've seen folks sit under bridges, but they don't have tents or they don't have anything else and they still sit there and they still do drugs and they still do those activities because they think that's a loophole around any type of enforcement strategy that we have. I will say, and I hope the police will agree, there is limited factors on how to police in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the year 2021. It's not nothing the mayor told them to do. It's not nothing the managing director told them to do. Some of this stuff has come from court cases on how they can proceed on quality of life crime, how they can walk up to an individual. We have folks here from PPD, not only Inspector McCarrick, we have other folks who could talk y'all through those efforts and how some of those tools is taken out of the police tool chest. It's not a Tumar Alexander decision. Quite frankly, it's not a Mayor Kenny decision. It's not a city council decision. They are bound by those standards and those laws that they got to comply with, right? And they retrain and they figure out ways to continue to try to serve you all. If you give Inspector McCarrick a chance, I'm sure he'll talk through all of that. He'll talk to all of the enforcement piece. Did I miss anything on the encampment resolution? I talked about services. I talked about giving them opportunity to services.
Folks.
I agree.
Folks, we're not going to get through this hearing if you do not allow Mr. Alexander to proceed.
If we not, we should be. So, Jill, that's a no. If not, we should be.
So I want to speak to. So there are two different points. I want to respond to.
4 or 5 months ago, my wife was dying of cancer. I called the cops. They couldn't do anything. I had to confront the drug dealer, and I had to invite them inside my house and see my wife that was dying, and tell them, "You can't be doing this in front of my house because my wife is dying." Wow, that's a disgrace. So we need Mayor Kennedy, and we need all you guys to do something with the cops, do something with the shelter. Before the 18th, it's not more permanent.
So if I can, for one moment, just respond to, if I. I really just wanted to respond to the one piece about the trauma that everybody's experiencing, and what I'm hearing is the need for your own supports. And right, okay, so I just want to speak to that for one moment, which is that we've got about 18,000 people in Kensington being treated in the Kensington area for a whole range of behavioral health treatments, with a whole range of behavioral health supports available to folks right here in Kensington. So I'm going to tell you now, and I think if people don't know about them, I want to tell you how you can find out more about it. And also, really, I'm hearing that that's a problem that you don't know how to access your own behavioral health services and care. And Philadelphia has some of the best. Let me just finish, because this is so critical that folks don't know how to get their own treatment and care. And Philadelphia has some of the best trauma-informed care services available to folks. You can laugh at that, but I'm talking about the treatment programs that are available. Okay. Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you. Because I'm trying to just give you, first of all, acknowledge the fact that you're experiencing trauma, and also want to yes. And I also want to say that. Okay. Well, I want to also say that I want to let you know about a way to get all the information you need to know to how to get connections. And for those on Medicaid, we have a very large Medicaid services here for folks. So it's not cost. Just let me just finish, because it's very important that I'm just going to give you a website. There are phone numbers, whatever, but there's so much there for you that will help you make the connection. If anybody goes home tonight and just goes to dbhids.org/boost, you will see information that can help you. Now, I understand that that's not. Okay. I hear that. But I also want you to know that if you are experiencing symptoms, you are experiencing trauma, that there is help for you, and that we're going to be bringing on November 9th a community resilience training for the community. If you're interested in that, we will let you know about that. So I do not want us to ignore the fact that you are telling us how much distress you're in. We hear you. And I know that what you're asking for is something different than what I just gave you. But what I gave you is still something that might be useful for you when
Dr. Bowen.
Okay.
Chief.
Thank you.
Dr. Bowen, if we can ask, is there a contact information? If people want more information, how do they access these services? Is there a number, a hotline, anything like that? So that's the first thing I want to ask. The second thing I just want to say is, I think we'd like to hear from the Chief Inspector next, because we want to hear what it is that you have to say in terms of remedy for a lot of these crime and violence issues that we're having in this neighborhood. And I'm not talking about drug addiction. I'm talking about, the violence that's associated with the drug trade that's happening in this community and that is holding people hostage. So if we could hear from you next. The third thing I want to say is that we are about almost an hour past due. So we have to vacate this building at 8 o'clock no matter what. So I know that it feels like there's a whole lot more that needs to be said tonight. I don't know if we want to do a reboot of this. I'm certainly open for that. If the council members want to do that and come back, I'm available. So we can make that happen. If you just want to let me know. So because we're not going to be able to get to all of the questions and concerns. But why don't we start, Dr. Bowen, if you want to give the contact information out, and then.
Councilwoman, they're passing out cards to everyone.
Excellent. Chief Inspector, we really have to be in order, everybody, okay? Chief Inspector, your mic's not on. I need quiet. We need quiet. We need quiet because we want to hear what it is that he has to say.
I speak rather loud, so
okay.
I'm comfortable talking like this as long as you can hear me in the back. So first and foremost, it was alluded to earlier, and I just want to give you a little background, that I previously served as the commanding officer of East Police Division for over 4.5 years. It is probably the most challenging assignment that this department's faced with. By all accounts, I will tell you, since I've come back, the landscape and the rules of engagement have significantly changed. What we see today, we would have never saw back then. However, it does exist. And it's to know, I'm not pointing fault at anybody. I'm not saying that there's a different model of policing. However, nationally, there has been a call to re-envision what policing is. The last thing that we are doing is looking to criminalize homelessness or addiction. However, anybody in this room who does not believe that there are components to the addiction issue that require fire policemen are sadly mistaken. The guys pushing, the guys peddling drugs out on the corner, the guys profiting by the death and destruction that drugs cause. Okay, the young ladies that are being forced into prostitution to support their habits. These are all efforts that police have to engage in. The one thing that I am absolutely happy about, and I've had the pleasure of working with many people in this room, for those I haven't, I will work with you moving forward. But I have a team of dedicated visionaries that work in East Police Division. Captain Rosario, who unfortunately couldn't be here, Captain Rodriguez, Lieutenant Mella, Ryan Barksdale, and Tina Willis. There was a challenge that was laid out earlier, I believe, to say, if you want to fix the problems, move into this area. I can tell you from the time I served here, and these men and women, every day probably spend more time in this area addressing problems than they do at their own homes. Okay, they are dedicated beyond belief, and we constantly challenge each other to find new ways of policing. Now, as Managing Director pointed out, yes, we have made some significant changes in law enforcement over a period of time. It is our job to figure out how to correct those issues. So when we look at currently the enforcement strategy, we are partners. We are one component to the greater strategy, and that is getting treatment and getting housing. However, we have to serve a function. We will support our partners in their effort. Every operation that we engage in is geared towards providing service to that community. We have a unique situation here, different than Center City, different than Paco, different than the Parkway. We have a significant addicted population who are homeless, who choose to be homeless in many cases. Other places, we have a significant homeless population. You don't have to agree with it, but the stats prove it. So, with that being said, we will continue our enforcement strategy. And what that is to engage this community to offer those services. Yet again, I know we're offering services repeatedly. Eventually, they'll accept it. That's our hope. Now, with that comes the frustration that we had in the past, and that is when somebody's willing for service, that we have the services available. The dedication from the managing director on down has been to create the beds and the addiction services to support when we move forward. That's been part of the delay. But as we go forward, the frustration that everybody experiences, we have enforcement that has to take place, and it had to be through collaboration with the district attorney's office to understand that we will offer services, and then when the services are out and out refused, to provide us with the groundwork and the foundation for us to go forward. It's not about mass incarceration of people. It is about getting people to accept the services that are extended to them. So we have policies for the encampment area, okay, a resolution. We are looking at private property comes with different requirements for us. It is on the business owner, property owner, then that's a non-residential, but property owner to establish that communication. Police will provide the support when they make that notification, and then to make that outreach to our services to get them the help. But there are certain requirements for what constitutes the obstruction of passageway that presents hazards to our children, to our elderly, to the community that has to walk out into the street. We had to establish those guidelines moving forward. That has been held, and I believe that we have our foundation moving forward that will be able to begin with that resolution. But to your point, if I begin enforcement in one area, we know that it's going to displace. It is incumbent on us to work hand in hand to identify any location and prevent it from ever getting to where it is now. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes. Yes.
And if we hit and police every block, then there won't be no drugs. Then they'll realize something. There just need to be
So what we're trying to do is we have to reach there's a happy medium that has to be achieved with that. Obviously, seeing the impact of officers hitting corners does have a profound effect for a short period of time. Our efforts have to be working with our partners who we currently engage with, not only internally, but at the state and federal level, to take down the organizations. Because if anybody here believes if I go out today and I make an arrest, or I lock up everybody on 3100 Kensington, how long before somebody backfills that door?
Hold on. Hold it. 1 second here. Okay. Well, legally, we have a number of people who still have to speak. And so we have 6 people, okay, and we have 8 minutes. So let's roll through that list, and if we get a chance, once we finish those folks, you can step to the back, step outside, and have additional conversation, okay? And like I said, we're all, I believe I'm speaking for the entire panel, we're all open, coming back, having additional conversation, trying to figure this out. I know what you're talking about. I'm not from Kensington, I don't live in Kensington, but I've seen it firsthand. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was over there again, and it's disgraceful. We all agree, it's disgraceful. So I know what Kensington and Allegheny used to be like. I used to live on Allegheny Avenue, on 28th and Allegheny. So I know what K&A used to be, and I know what it can go back to being and how it can serve the residents of this community and be a place where people are proud to live like it used to be. So I'm sorry, I'm off. I took up a minute, shoot. Sean, please go through the list.
Could we, could we please have Ronald Dawkins, Eunice Sanchez, and Annette Mears, if they're still here?
You have Pastor Cookie left, right?
That's Ronald Dawkins, Eunice Sanchez, and Annette Mears. Good evening. We're going to ask you to really be brief because as we mentioned, we have just a few minutes. So if you could be brief. Please state your name for the record. And actually, Sean, if you want to call the other panelists forward so that we can have everybody at one time.
Ali Davis. Jay Ginlett, I apologize. Is there a Christina Garay here? That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, if we could have you state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm not Annette Mears, I'm Antoinette Mears. I've been a resident of Kensington for 58 years, born and raised. 25 years of that, I was a drug addict in the crack epidemic. Got arrested every time I turned around. By God's grace, I got 20 years clean now.
Amen.
Not saying that jail saved my life, but looking at my mother having me arrested saved my life. Because why? I was doing her harm in my addiction. I'm not saying that resting your way through this is not going to happen. You can't. I'm talking about recovery. Instead of letting these developmental people come in here and build $1,200 apartment buildings out of abandoned factories, let the city invest in residential treatment. Not 30 days, not 90 days, not even 6 months. I'd say long-term treatment. I was in treatment for a year. I'm still in treatment today. Treatment isn't for a short period of time. Treatment is a lifestyle. You have to commit your life to this, to stay clean and sober. If you are not willing, you cannot force it. It will not happen. So therefore, all right, I get everybody's sick and tired of everything that's going on in the neighborhood. I am too. I've lived here my whole life. I lived in the same house for over 40 years, grew up in it. I can't leave the block without preparing myself mentally, physically, to leave the block to even go to the corner store. I had to have my neighbor, who's a civic leader, get a cop put on the corner because we were coming out with baseball bats. A recovering addict coming out with baseball bats, chasing addicts off the block so our kids could come outside and play. Not cool. Stop letting these people that come and build these apartments and charge $1,700 a month. We don't need that here. Take one of them factories and put a treatment center in there. It doesn't have to be in the middle of Kensington. There's plenty of empty space down on Delaware Avenue where you could build little tiny houses as treatment centers. Come on. Stop letting people come in our neighborhood and saying, oh, this is what we're going to do, demand that they do something else, but they do it anyway. As an addict in recovery for 20 years, I say, take these empty buildings, turn them into something, mental health, treatment. Then send these motherfuckers somewhere else.
Please.
I'm sorry, and that's all I have.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your testimony. All right, sir, if we could have you state your name for the record and proceed.
All right, my name is Jacquay Janlett. I'm going to try to make this fast. I got a lot of feelings about this. I'm from Fairview, Philly, with Rebecca that spoke earlier. I'm a group leader there in Kensington. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from Albany, so I know what Philly like. I know the neighborhoods. Kensington is the worst neighborhood I ever saw in my life. I'm going to speak for myself, my experience, and the youth and the younger generation. It's just real sad that with the kids I work with, what they experience too every day, the conversations I have with some kids, and they tell me that they used to the stuff they see in their neighborhood on a daily basis, the trash, just the drugs, everything is just real sad. I mean, it's all over the city, but in Kensington it's just real raw, and the kids is used to it, and they growing up to a lifestyle that they think is normal, and they want to be a part of it growing up. I think it's real sad. They just need a new direction. I think the kids is just the most important thing of it all. I think it's a lot of talking going on, a lot of meetings and stuff like that, but I think action is more important than anything. I think the kids just need to see positive role models, just positivity. Everything negative should just, I feel like it's a solution to it, and I feel like it's just really a lot of talking. The kids just need something different. I really feel like the kids is the most important than anything, because they just watching us every day, and it's real bad. That's really all I gotta say right there.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Before we wrap up, I know Councilwoman Gim had a question.
Yeah, just a brief one. I did want to ask, I don't know if the managing director is still here, but a couple of quick questions are that from Dr. Bowman, a number of people asked about the need to really update treatment, and I think what we were asking for is a timeline, not an acknowledgement that there's a problem with the treatment program. I think we need a timeline to get an answer back for that. I know that we pushed really hard in this budget process to get mobile crisis units out to communities. We were only able to get 4 across the whole city. That is clearly not enough, but there's no question that we should try to dedicate at least one of those to this community in particular, to make sure that there's direct services that people can call. And then finally, I think Mr. McKinney, Jaquan, who talked just now, Rebecca, Kat from Youth United for Change, really spoke about the needs for a coordinated approach. Jamal spoke about this, and especially about seeing it through the eyes of a young person. School starts in 2 weeks. All these seats will be filled by hundreds of young people who will attend Lewis Elkins Elementary School. They'll walk through the streets. We need a plan. There's no question. The start of school after such a difficult time period for so many of them needs a safe corridor, safe passage, and would like to have an update from the city about how everybody is going to coordinate together to work on that. And then finally, I just want to thank Brian from the Free Library of Philadelphia, one of our city workers. I do want you to know, if you're still out there, that in our youth anti-violence agenda that was created with the support of a number of different groups, 19134 is a priority zip code. It's always been a priority zip code. And I just want to thank people for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll look at, for those questions, if we can have responses in writing to the chair. Hold on 1 second. Councilman O would like to make a comment as well.
Yeah, all right, just for transparency's sake and clarity when we pick this up, I strongly feel that this policy is a failure by design. I think it's a design defect. I think trying to please everybody ends up pleasing nobody. If you try to do all these things in a policy that is basically attracting so many people into this area, you don't have the resources to treat them. You have not gotten rid of the barriers that you can get rid of. You haven't worked with neighboring jurisdictions, Chester County, Camden County, Delaware County, Bucks County, pooling resources. I think at the end of the day, this process of trying to do all these things which you cannot do only magnifies the problem, and we've seen that over many years, not just the last 4 years. I remember talking about this when I first got elected. I think that was 2012. We were meeting on this very topic. So what I would like to know, and I think to get to the heart of it, is how do you justify a policy of attracting and retaining so many people that you cannot house, you cannot feed, you cannot treat, with ever decreasing and reduced resources, when instead you can work with neighboring jurisdictions, length of treatment, treatment on demand, removing barriers, providing all those resources, if you work together with a regional approach. I'd like to know why we can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know your question was heard by the administration. Were you looking for a response, Councilman?
Next time we meet.
Okay, all right, next time we meet.
Next time I ask that question.
Okay, all right. Councilwoman Sanchez?
Yes, Madam Chair, I want to thank all my council colleagues for coming here, and want to thank all of the residents who passionately spoke about what's going on. What's missing here is the political will and the sense of urgency for what we have destroyed in Kensington. We destroyed this quality of life for the residents of Kensington when we subscribed to a failed containment strategy that anything can happen in Kensington and that these lives and these community is dispensable. There is no urgency from the administration. Setting days and deadlines, August 18th is only 2 removal of encampments. It doesn't deal with the systemic problems that we have here. And what I am calling on is the mayor and the administration to acknowledge that this policy has failed. We want housing and the need for housing. We have unhoused people in Kensington, but we have folks who are in housing that is unstable. And we have to recognize that. So what I am calling on, and I want to thank my council colleagues for coming here today, this is not a 7th district problem. This is a citywide problem that systemic racism has allowed to flourish here. I live in Kensington. I'm a graduate of Mastbaum. I walk K&A every day while going to high school. And even in our most challenging times, none of what is allowed to happen in Kensington was allowable then. The mayor said he was sick and tired when things happened on the Parkway. This is year 4 in Kensington. And what I'm asking for is for departments to stop checking off the boxes and start connecting the dots. As I said to Dr. Farley, who would constantly remind me of the 1,200 people who die of addiction, how many funerals do you go to? How many people do you know? I am tired, I am frustrated, and I am more tired because as a public elected official and someone who's done community development for 30 years, I've never seen the unwillingness of leadership to say, we're gonna do things different. We're gonna own our systemic problems and we're gonna fix them. And so on behalf of all of my colleagues in council, I need my council colleagues and those at-large members who are here today to hear from these residents of Kensington, but to support me when I go back to council and I say that the money, yes, we have resources. This is about political will. We have $110 million in our Office of Emergency Housing Services. That's $22,000 per person if we believe they're a 5,000 person homeless population. We are doing things wrong, and we have to own them. And so, Madam Chair, I know that you have allowed us to have these public discussions. We will come back, because in May 21st, I had a hearing and I asked this administration, please tell me that we are going to be able to have a safe Kensington this summer. And we are now at the end of summer, and it has gotten worse than I ever imagined. We need a sense of urgency, and that urgency is now, and I need my council colleagues to understand that this is a citywide problem, and the residents of Kensington deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. I can, Councilman Squilla?
And thank you. And Maria, Councilmember Sanchez said it all. We need to continue to work together. And as you heard, not one of us could do this by ourselves, but we need a direction and we need a plan. And we have to follow that plan. And everybody has to know exactly what they can and cannot do. People and the neighbors have to know, the police department has to know, the nonprofits who we partner with have to know, council has to know. We have to be able to go in the same direction to get the same resolve. If we don't do that, we're going to be back here in 2 months talking about the same thing, back here in 6 months, back here in 2 years, and it's only going to be getting worse. So we need to continue to push the envelope, to understand and then admit that our failed policies has caused these problems. And we have to change the policies of how we address both the issues of addiction, homelessness, and how we treat the people who live in these communities. And if we don't do that, we're fooling ourselves and we're failing. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the residents who really spoke from the heart, from experience, from lived experience there. And I agree. Maybe we should all spend a week in an apartment here in Kensington and live through it and see it firsthand and understand what it is to live like this day in and day out. And bring your children with you. Bring your children with you to live with it and see it also, because then you'll really feel what everybody else is feeling in these communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I hear you.
We'll switch houses.
I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This concludes the hearing on resolution number 200403. We want to thank everyone for being here. I thank my council colleagues, and this committee stands in recess until the call of the chair. Thank you.